Good morning, hello there, and welcome to my Arty Corner here on YouTube. I say good morning because it is morning here in the UK. It's 9:20, it's the 11th of September. It's a tad overcast outside, and I'm here to do some drawing. It's not going to be a long video, I hope, she says, because I've got quite a bit to do today, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment probably. But first, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody who's subscribed, who's given thumbs up for my videos, who's given me a shout out on social media. I appreciate you all very much. I really, really do. And it helps to get word out to other people who might find what I'm doing useful. You know, I make no claims I'm right about things. I'm not a CCT, but I do like Zentangle patterns. I do enjoy showing people how to draw patterns, not just Zentangle, but other things, other motifs, you know, like this one up here and so on, and others, because the more people who get to express themselves creatively in this world, the better I think it will be for all of us, individually and collectively. But that's a different tale. So, with no further ado, in front of you, you can see some of my tools for today. I've got some coloured pieces of paper, including one that's got, that's right, I used this to test alcohol marker on to see if it went through, and it doesn't. It doesn't bleed through on this paper. How marvellous. So that makes me very happy, but I can use the reverse if I choose. These are toned papers from Fabriano. They're 15% cotton, which makes them tougher than usual papers. They've got a texture to them on both sides, but it's quite smooth. They're designed for drawing on with dry media, but you can get away with using a little bit of wet media, but they can wrinkle a little. So if you're prepared to put up with the wrinkles, or put these underneath something heavy for a while, or give them a cool iron, they'll be good to go. I've got a pencil. Look at this. Is that ridiculous? It's a Tombow Zoom 707, and I saw it and I just couldn't resist it. It is so, I don't know, different, cute, elegant, quirky, definitely quirky. And I thought, oh, it can go with my journal. It doesn't, because it won't fit in the elastic hoop, pen hoop, but I keep it in a pencil case, drag it out from time to time because it is just so darn lovely. I got a couple of fountain pens here. These are TWSBI Ecos. I've got Documentus ink in them, which is archival, so it's waterproof. It won't fade in light or whatever. In fact, the paper's likely to rot away, and I think the ink will still persist. It will float in air without any paper. I've got a water brush because I may use some colour. And I also have a brown micron. It's an 05. Getting hold of brown microns here in the UK is like finding hen's teeth at the moment. 01s, I can get them, but it's like 2-3 weeks delivery and a huge postage cost. And yeah, say no more. So, I'm not sure which one I want to use here. I think I may plump for the grey, one of the grey today. So I'm going to start in some kind of fashion, and I'm going to give myself a border here, because I thought today I just want to fill something quite simply, because I do have a fair amount of stuff I want to do. So hopefully you can see my pencil lines. I'm trying not to draw too heavily, but what I want to do is I've gone into my, I call this my visual dictionary, or my visual reference, my Zibladoni. And I've got these lovely patterns here, here, here. That one's very similar as well. That's similar in construction. So I'm going to use these. Actually, that one there's quite interesting as well. That makes a nice shell. These are all microscopic images of living things. And I draw them in a very stylised way, basically because that is what scientists do. So I'm going to start with one of them, and I'm going to start with the central circle, like so. And I'm going to put a bigger circle around it, like so. And then I'm just going to give myself some lines around here, where I'm going to put some very rounded triangular shapes in, and that's what I'm actually going to start with. So this is my fine nibbed eco. The other one's extra fine. So I'm going to draw almost like little wedge shapes, so they're narrower towards the centre and wider away from them. Now with this ink, I think it does take a little bit longer to dry on this paper than it would on regular sketchbook paper. It takes a little while on there. If you're drawing with microns, they dry really quickly, except on vellum or some other surfaces where they can remain wet for a while. But on here, now this reminds me of a little bit of the Tangle pattern Peppered, except I'm not doing it in the same way. So here I'm going to ink over-ish, just an ish, actually going just a little bit outside of that line to connect those here. And then I'm going to draw a curve pointing towards the centre, or a line curving towards the centre to connect these outer ones, which I quite like that kind of shape. Now I am going to use my finer pen because I am going to make this a bit more like that Tangle pattern Peppered. And I'm going to do that in the centre, where I'm going to almost make these look like they're hooking over this edge. And I'm doing that just by filling it in with black. It gives enough of an impression of that. I'm not going to do anything on the outside, but the one thing I do want to do is I am going to pop a stripe down the middle. Now yesterday I was missing in action in terms of video and pretty much anything, because I went to a heritage railway that I used to be a member of up to about 10 years ago. And they have steam trains, steam locomotives there, and yesterday was their gala. And oddly, a couple of people I knew have been from there have been in touch with me asking if I was going to visit, or, you know, it'd be lovely to see you again. There's odd things have happened that have brought people back into communication. So I thought, okay, I'll go and I'll have a look and I'll see. So I took my camera with me and I had a lovely day. I really, really did. I saw some people I haven't seen for years, and a lot of the people that I knew on one time seemed to have gone, but everybody that recognised me was lovely and welcome. It was nice to meet up with people who I really did get along with there, and you know, other old friends who were there as well. I spent the whole day with a good friend, it seems, as well, which was lovely, and other people. It wasn't just one. Lots of photographs of trains taken and other bits and bobs, clouds in particular, and it was absolutely lovely. But I didn't get back until it was well after 7 p.m. I was absolutely exhausted. I hadn't eaten all day. Had some disgusting tea, fair play. I don't know what tea bags they're using, but it's tasted of licorice. It's not nice, and they weren't herbal. They were supposed to be ordinary tea. But so that's where I was yesterday, and I've got a sneaky suspicion that I may be getting involved again there in one way or another. And I think it's going to be making use of my more creative skills rather than clambering around on locomotives, which is actually what I used to do an awful lot. I kid you not. And yeah, I used to run the buffet as well. But they've expanded so much since then. So I haven't been there back there for a number of years. So that was lovely. And I say it was lovely to catch up with people. Unexpected. Bump into people. So I was really nervous about going because I'm not used to being around people anymore. And I wasn't quite sure how I'd be welcomed or not, in one way, if that makes sense. It's a long tale about why I left the railway, which is in the past, and it doesn't do any good to retell, even from my perspective. I'm sure everybody's got their own perspective on things. But I wasn't at a good place in my life either. And you know, it was lovely. Anyway, so on this one, I've put hearts instead of the wedgie shapes that I've got here. And I think in between them, I'm going to put, oh, what way should I do this one? I think I will also go down and inwards. So these look like they're cousins, like they're related, like they're the same kind of thing. They could actually make really interesting flowers, couldn't they? And then for this one, what I'm going to do here is aura these this way, and I am going to put a little bit of a break roughly towards the centre of these lines. It doesn't have to be exact. And did you see what I did there at the bottom here? I just rounded this one up a little bit just to give me that same kind of U shape as I've got at the top. So hopefully you can see that one a bit better here. I am giving you a good overview of what I'm doing today rather than zooming in. So when I zoom in, I forget where I am. So I've missed a bit there, but in the grand scheme of things, it won't be visible. So I'm rounding at the bottom before I start, and then just auraing all the way down. I say these make lovely clusters of, yeah, I will tidy that one up. In fact, I'm going to come back and add some line weights once I finish doing this. So I had a lovely but exhausting day yesterday, and I'm feeling really tired, and it's very strange because although I'm an introvert, I do like people, but I like to be around people who are interesting, who have similar interests to myself, I suppose, and who talk about things on a deeper level than surface level, shall we say. So I'm funny like that. So even though it was really busy there, I only interacted with a small number of people at any one given time. So I was able to manage my worries being around people. So here I am just thinking about how I do this, and it's to the left and to the right where I'm adding some line weight. This ink does spread a bit on this paper, just a little bit, but that just adds that nice definition. I'm going to do the same with these ones actually. It just starts to bring out some dimension, which then can be followed up with in terms of adding shade and highlight. Or shade and light perhaps would be a better way of saying it rather than highlight. So we've got these going on. Okie dokes. Okay, so another variation, because we're into variations today. It's a variation day of these. Again, I'm going to start with that central circle. Ooh, this is going to be a big circle round here. And because I'm not averse to using erasers, I don't mind drawing over things because I will erase the lines before I add anything else. I've done this one bigger because, how am I going to do this? Which one am I going to do? I've got this really interesting one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by drawing an almost circle to cap the ends of these, but I'm leaving a fairly good gap at the bottom because I think starting with the circle is the way to go. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do almost a teardrop shape but I'm not closing the top off, so if that makes any sense. So I'm going a little bit out and down. Then I'm going to pop my circle in. I am going to make this inner circle just that little bit bigger. It's really just a guide to help me keep that space in between. And with this one, I think I'll do this one a little bit different. Oh, we're getting into the realms of things now that look like sea urchins. So I had a lovely day. I've got tons of photographs, and I've got 2 blogs. One of them is just called Angela Porter, although its web address is artwyrd.com. But my other one is called Curious Stops and Tea Shops, which I set up a few years ago with a friend. We had this brainwave when we were out one day on one of our days out, which usually involves stopping at a tea shop or a cafe for tea, in my case, coffee usually in hers, and cake, and as a way to record our little outings and things that we do. And particularly when I went away to West Yorkshire with her for a week, it must be about 4 years ago now, because COVID got in the way, and it was lovely. And so it was really nice because I did a blog entry every day with some photographs that I'd taken, and and it was just, but over COVID, it's just kind of gone on the back burner, really. And so I thought I'd get it up and running again and sort of like broaden it rather than from just physical journeys, but to journeys of mind, thought, memory, learning, art possibly, but I've got my Artwyrd one for that. But I'll see what happens, because it's going to be whatever my journey, I suppose, in life is, because there'll always be tea stops and tea shops for me, no matter what. So today I want to get a blog entry done for that, as well as to go with this in my other blogs, so 2 blog entries. I do have some journaling I want to do, but that is neither here nor there. That can happen later. But the other thing I need to do is to really get to grips with myself and get the cover for my next colouring book coloured in, or partly coloured in at least, because it's quite mind intensive for me. And I'm just thinking that if I can get a fair bit of it done today, then tomorrow I can finish it off, which will be fine. So here, on either side of the pencil line I've put 4 in because I know I'm going to need some space here. I'm putting in teardrop shapes, but they sort of like bend outwards towards the top. So they bend in an opposite direction. So the one to the left will bend towards the left, and the one on the right will bend towards the right. Like so. And then here I'm just going to imagine where they'd go and the shape they'd create, like that, because they tuck under. Now then, in between them I want to put this kind of shape, like the top of a heart. It's like a fancy V shape. So I'm curving up, down to a point, and curving back up again. Don't need to do that one. And in between these, I am going to do a curve that goes slightly inwards from the circle, like so. And that one we can't see there. In the centre here, I'm going to do something a bit different in between these. I'm going to put a circle at the bottom to begin with. And then I'm going to imagine the line going through the middle of the circle and joining the circles together so it's almost like that. So that's the same kind of idea, but slightly different. And I may just pop a few more of these up. I'm sort of tucking them behind each other, but I'm not being very precious about that because they are very small. Up to that point and stop. So I kind of have to think ahead and leave myself enough space to get one that will fit in there. This one's easy because I'm only going to take it up here like so. So there's some other extra little details in between. I think I might leave that one exactly as it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could do with a fifth one. So let me just, we'll do a little one over here. And let's have a think about how I could make something a bit different that isn't on my page, perhaps. So let me start with my lines in. And I think I'll do, we do 6. You can do as many or as few as you like. I guess we could do one with just one line. But, okay, so this time I'm going to do leaf shapes. Or petal shapes if you prefer. Just put the circles in as a guide, don't necessarily have to follow them exactly. And then in between, whereas with this, which one? That one, we had like a V shape going down. Let's have one that goes out a little bit, like so. And I'm going to pop this circle in, perhaps a little bit further in than the others. And then I'm going to create that border here. Again, as something that little bit different to what we've got elsewhere. The only other thing I need to do to this one is to add the weighting that gives some dimension to these. Like so. I didn't do that with these, did I? But we will now. This is tricky because I'm looking towards the left and the right, so... or the left and the bottom, really. There we go. Left and bottom, not left and right. What am I talking about? So that works fine and well there, I think. And I think with this one, I'm going to pop that aura there. So that will look a bit different. They all look a bit different, don't they? But they're all essentially the same kind of idea in construction. And to vary patterns, it only needs very simple variations. And from time to time, I spend a lot of time looking at microscopic images or illustrations of them, or things like, oh, what's his name? Haeckel. Haeckel's book, what's his first name? Can't remember. But back in the 1800s, I think it was, he did a lot of illustrations based on, what do you call it? Microscopic images, sea life, fossils, things like that. And I absolutely loved his work, always have done. And found it just absolutely fascinating and amazing. So I've got quite a bit of space in here. And I think what I'm going to do with the space, while I think about it, is let's put some leafy weirdness going on. So I am creating a thicker stroke, which will end in a point. And then I'm drawing two sides of a leaf on either side, and heart-shaped leaves, because I quite like heart-shaped leaves. So this one's going to end up being a little bit bigger and tucks under. And I might even pop some other things in here in a moment, but we'll see. I love these shapes of leaves. So I've got a fairly busy day ahead of me, as well as a chat with a friend in America who helps to run, or basically runs, the Facebook fan group, which is fantastic of her. And so we'll be chatting later today, if that's still going to happen. So that'll be okay and nice to catch up. So it's been a funny old weekend in that kind of way. It's been certainly busier socially than I have been for a long time. And I do need some downtime, so art will be the perfect thing for much of today, and writing. Because, yeah, I like to write as well. So I'm going to leave those where they are, because I want to start to add some colour here. So I'm just going to find what colours I want to use, and I'll be back in a... Okay, so I've been a bit naughty because I saw that Tim Holt's Ranger have got some distress watercolour pencils out. I like watercolour pencils. Well, I like Inktense, so I thought I'd get these because they're in the Distress Ink colour palettes. And I like the Distress Ink colours. So I've dug out these, and I've got prize ribbon here, which is a lovely rich blue. It's there, you can't really see it. I've tested them on the paper just to see. This one's Salty Ocean, which is this brighter blue here, and Peacock Feathers is a tealy green, which you can just see here. And I've got the white, which does show up, surprisingly. And I thought I'd just have a look at adding these. This is really an experiment, you do know that, because I don't actually know that hopefully we'll see the lines through here. I'm not going to sharpen them because I'm not going to waste any of the pigment. They are actually woodless pencils, so the whole thing is made up of what you'd normally find inside a pencil. And they're fantastic because you get an awful lot of the pigmented pencil for your money. But like all watercolours, they're not going to be light fast. So things like this need to be kept in some kind of folder or sketchbook or whatever, or journal, so that they're not overly exposed to light, because the colours will fade. Like with all watercolours, watercolour pencils, I can always add more colour if I want to once this is dried. So I'm being cautious because I do want to get that gentle gradation of colour. Which it's nice, and it's quite surprising how the colours show up on this grey paper. You might notice that the paper's beginning to dome here, and I'm fine with that because I know that it will either flatten or I can flatten it. So I've got that one there. Okay, these hearts, I think I'll do the hearts in this lovely Peacock Feathers, which is a lovely tealy colour. Obviously, the more pigment you put down, the more intense the colour will be. So with this one, because it's a lighter colour, I'm going to put a fair bit more of the pigment down. and just see what happens. The nice thing is on this paper it really does dry quite quickly. This one is practically dry already. It's not really that warm here. It's also lovely how they show up on the paper, on coloured paper, because normally with watercolours you could get it. You'd normally use something like gouache, which is an opaque watercolour. But I'm not a fan of gouache, however you say it. And it does cover over the lines you've drawn, and I want my lines to show through here. So that's quite nice. Okay, I'm going to use the Salty Ocean on this one, I think, here. And I'm going to keep these basically monochrome, but I'm going to give each section a chance to dry before I go back and add more. And I'm just using the intensity of the colour to add the shadows that I want, or that darkness of colour that implies shadow or not so much light. And I am activating all of these. But like any other watercolour pencil, you don't have to use them as watercolours. You can actually use them as ordinary colouring pencils. And they are actually not too dissimilar from the distress colours, which is great. They haven't got, they've got a couple of my favourite ones. Rusty Hinge is in there, which is possibly my favourite brown. Walnut Stain's okay. I wish they had Aged Mahogany, which is that lovely red brown colour that I like. But you can mix the colours. And they do actually stand out. They almost glow against the grey background. To my eyes anyway. And on the screen they definitely do, because the camera picks things up in a slightly different way. So I'll be back in a mo. I just need to go and do something. We are back. Yeah, just been asked if I'd do something this morning, so I don't have a lot of time left here, sadly, but we'll have a look and see where we go with this. So here I'm going to add some of the peacock feathers in here, essentially because I can. I can see that the lines are being muted where I haven't been careful about where I keep this colour in, but that's not a big issue, because whenever you add colour, often you have to go back to sharpen up the lines again. But that might just be me misperceiving things. But these are really nice, because I'm not really a fan of ordinary coloured watercolour pencils. I don't have any apart from the Inktense. And these are they're not opaque, but in large amounts they are really quite opaque on the paper, which is interesting to me. It's interesting. Okay, so I've got this one here. Really don't want to use it round there. Should have got some other colours out, Angela. Probably should have. Okay, how about if I actually use this one here? So this is the Salty Ocean. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the Salty Ocean on the edge, and I'll put some of the prize ribbon towards the bottom. Like so. And then hopefully, if I'm careful, I should be able to mix them in the middle and get one fading into the other, which would be quite nice, which is a way of adding a variation in the colour and gradation. And that darker blue at the bottom really does imply some kind of shadow. But that doesn't mean I can't go back and add the darker colour elsewhere. So where I want to keep the colour at the top really quite light, or lighter, I'm starting from the lightest colour and blending downwards. If I've missed, I can go back and re-wet these. They don't dry permanently like the ink tints do, so you can always move them around. And if you do go over a line or over a bit, you can always wet them and dab them up. Now again, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy these, far from it. I use a lot of media. I had a big clear out, and of course I'm accumulating new now. But I really am a fan. I really do like the distress ink colours, and you don't find exact matches in other products really. You get something that's similar, but they're not quite the same because there's an infinite number of colours you can mix. So as I was saying, you can go back and re-wet them if you accidentally go over into an area you don't want the colour in. Damp it down and just pick it up with some tissue or with a clean brush. Just keep going until the area is clean. I've got little bits here where I overcoloured, so, or in this case I can just spread it out because there was so little. Once you've diluted it, you won't even notice the colour. I'm just cleaning the brush off on the back of my hand because I forgot to get some tissue out, or paper towel, or a cloth. So this will be fine. So that's quite nice. But of course what that does as well is it gives me the option to add a darker colour as well on some of these, especially where I want some shadow. So on this one I've just put the dark colour on the outside, and I can gently just dampen it and just gently fade it down into that other colour, and it will subtly give that darker edge and the shadow that I'm looking for. Just like that. And just take the very edge of it down just to mix in. It will look a bit clunky at the moment because it's wet, but it'll work just fine and dandy. This one I think something else you can do with, whether it's with watercolour pencils, Inktense pencils, Neocolor crayons, is you can pick the colour up directly from the tip of the pencil, which is what I'm doing here because I want to add some colour to this because it does look a little bit insipid on the edge. So instead of using the prize ribbon, I'm using Salty Ocean here to give it a really blue colour. In fact, I prefer this to scribbling it down, to be honest. They're picking up so much pigment and colour from this so easily. I do this a lot with Inktense pencils, especially for small areas, because the colours are so intense in them. You only need a little bit of colour and it goes a very long way. These seem to be pretty much the same. But the one thing I'm going to be careful with, that while the tip is wet, I'm not going to let it sit near any other pencils. Otherwise I'll end up with messy pencil ends and having to clean them off and wasting some of these beautiful pencils. So that works really nicely. I'm chuffed with that. Okay, for the these hearts here, they do need something at the end. And what I've got here, they do a white. And I'm hoping, I've tried this on some paper and the white sort of is there. But I'm not entirely sure whether I will get any white or enough white up from this to make. Yes, I think I will. It's a question of making sure I pick up as much as I possibly can. Like so. Really saturating the water with the white, and I think we'll get a fair amount of highlight there, which is I think what I want as a contrast to the others. And in fact, I may do that for these, just a couple of them, because I will finish this before I've completed all of this, and I'll come back, or I'll throw a photograph into the community tab section, there's always a link in the description to it. So if I don't finish something in a video, because that can end up with a very long video, I tend to do very long videos anyway, don't I? Trying to keep this one a bit shorter because I've got so much I need to do today and something else has just cropped up. So, but I'll throw that in for you to see. So those are that's actually, while it's wet, it does look really quite white, but I can go with one of the other colours, just adding a little bit up and just adding perhaps a hint of it in the tips of this, just to add that little bit of shadow. And of course I can blend those in. So I'm adding the some peacock feathers here. In fact, I didn't get any colour down the end there, so that'll be really good. And I'm just going to try to keep it to a small area, just blending back and forth, and I'm sure it'll work out nicely. But it's just getting that hint of a darkness in. You don't always have to add shadow in terms of black or highlight in terms of white, although here I've got white. It's just that lighter colour and darker colour. So if you think dark and light, then it'll work fine. And of course this white will stand out even though it's not completely opaque against the grey background. So I like working on coloured papers. I get all of these lovely, lovely effects are possible. It makes things sing. So you can see what I'm beginning to do here. And I can tell you now, these leaves are going to be done in this lovely, lovely peacock feathers. And I am going to wet this quite a bit because I do want quite a bit of colour on these. I've just had a deja vu moment, as if I've done this before. And maybe I've done something similar, but I don't know. And the stems, I may do those in a different colour. But now I know the white will stand out against the colours. Oh, that's quite a strong one. That's fine though, we can do that, because it will add some variety and depth there as well. So I hope you've enjoyed these motifs, and they're ones you might give a go with or create your own, because the basic structure is just starting with two concentric circles, putting some lines around it, and then deciding how you're going to split that circle up and how you're going to join the elements together and so on. And I think the possibilities are, well, almost endless. And of course, each time you draw it, you'll come up with something new and different, and find your own way of expressing yourself with things like this. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the prize ribbon, hopefully. I'm just going to mix that in on one side here, just to darken one side that little bit more, because they will mix. And I get a lovely bluey green here, which is in contrast to the other side then. That works really quite nicely, doesn't it? So, just starting to get that working here. So I'm going to leave the video here. I'm not entirely sure what I'll do, but whatever I do, if I use shadow highlight, I mean, I need to do something about drop shadows and things. So whether I do that with a pencil or whether I use a distress ink crayon, I'll leave that in the notes of the description. But you've got the basis, the start here for where you go next, and to have a go with it. So have fun, enjoy yourselves, see what variations you can come up of these kinds of shapes. And I look forward to hopefully you tagging me in them in social media and showing them off to me. So please look after yourselves, take care, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye for now. Bye.